in the last video, I created a couple of folders, which I called Week 1 and Week 2, and I moved some of our course pack content into those folders. One of the nice things about Blackboard and working with content from a publisher is that you can take the content that the publisher has created, and if they've built it natively in Blackboard like we have, you can use the deployment tools of Blackboard to control when students see what and when. So I moved some of the documents. We have the model student papers that I moved into Week 1, some of the templates I moved into Week 2, and then I controlled when students are going to actually see those documents by placing them into the folder and then setting it so the folder itself displays at a very particular moment in time. So Week 1 is April 24th, and then the next week, May 14th, student will see the documents that I've placed there. So this is the first thing that you want to do after you get the course pack installed. Decide where you want to place the content that we've created. Now, you may just want to proceed as is. You don't necessarily have to reorganize the content, but just know that if you do want to, you have the ability to do so. So just a few more things for you to consider here. We have the templates and worksheet, our author bios, and I can move those into any place, in any location that I'd like. The bulk of the content that's going to be available in the Back to the Lake composition course pack is going to be found in our exercises and quizzes. Now, these are pre-made assignments or quizzes that we have built within Blackboard. That means that when students take them, when you deploy them, the responses are going to go into your Blackboard gradebook, so you don't have to set up anything. The course pack is free, completely free and open, so you simply have to install it. And then after you have deployed the assessments, students will take those assessments and the results will go into your gradebook. So every student has access, there's no excuses, and that hard work of creating assessments, which you can always edit, and that's what we'll talk about next, is ready to go from the first day of class. So where you place the assessment is going to be completely up to you. So right now I have Week 1, I have Week 2. Maybe what you decide is to create a button over here and place all of the assessments that the students are going to be responsible for within this content area. Maybe you want to place the assessment within one of these folders. And you can also use the folders that we've created here if you want to have students navigate easily to a particular area. Now, here's what I'm going to do. These are just going to be empty placeholders. So if I click on exercises and quizzes, you can see how we've broken it up, exercises and quizzes, and then reading quizzes. If I click on reading quizzes and drill down, I can place assessments into these folders, but they haven't yet been deployed. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to move back up to Comp 1301. So in the scenario in which you wanted to place all of your assessments behind a button in the left-hand navigation, this is how you do that. So from the top left corner, I'm going to click on the plus symbol, and I'm going to add a content area. And when I select Add Content Area, I'm then going to type out the name of that content area, which is going to be exams or quizzes, or it can be whatever you'd like. I'm then going to hit submit. But before that, I do want to make it available to students. And again, you control that, so you can turn it off and on at your will. And I'm going to hit submit. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, once you create something new in Blackboard, it always moves it down to the bottom for a reason I'm not sure I understand. And then I'm going to scroll up because you would expect that it would move it to the top, but at any rate, I'm going to place exams right under Comp 1301, and remember that used to be course materials. That's the default name whenever for this content area whenever you install the course pack. So by clicking on exams, I can then go ahead and deploy the assessments that I want students to be responsible for. Now again, we're going to do this a different way in just a moment, where I'm going to put the assessments in folders. But I just want to show you what you do with the content that we've created within the course pack is completely up to you. You're not stuck deploying the assessments or using the content in a publisher's way, because at Norton, we've decided to build the content right into your course. So what this means is I can create a content area, as I've done here, called exams, And then I'm going to select on assessments. And we need to deploy all of those assessments that are available to you and that are in the course pack. After I select assessments, I'm going to select on test. Now, test is just the name that Blackboard calls anything that's graded. So it's called test here, but the exercises and quizzes that we'll see in a moment are what they are. So I'm going to click on assessments, and then I'm going to click on test. I'll next be presented by a page that will actually allow me to select the assessment that I want to deploy within the exams content area. So perhaps the first thing that I want to do is I want to deploy the Chapter 4 narration and punctuating dialogue assessment. To make sure that that deploys, I'm going to select on it so it's highlighted, and then I'm going to hit submit. Now when I hit submit, Blackboard's going to present me with some deployment options. So I can change the name of the assessment if I'd like to do that. You can provide some additional instructions here, speaking specifically about how it's going to be graded, for example. If you want it to open up in a new test window, that's something that you can control. These are all tools that are native to Blackboard using our content, our assessment. You can control the test availability. The one radio button that you most likely do want to select is, if you want students to see that immediately, is make the link available. And that means it's then going to be deployable to them. Now I can control when it deploys in just a moment, but you'll always want to select make the link available if you want students to have access to that quiz. You may want to allow students to try that assessment multiple times. So I'm going to select on multiple attempts, and maybe I want to give students two tries, and I want to give them the highest grade of those 2 tries. So I can do all that using that Blackboard functionality. We can set a timer, we can force completion. That simply means that students have to take the assessment at one sitting. I can set a time limit, and then I can set when the students are going to have access to this assessment. So this is really useful. We made the assessment available, but you may want to control when students can actually have access to that assessment. Say, for example, it's important that students do the reading before they come to class. You can tell Blackboard to make the assessment that's related to their book reading, that's related to something that you've determined is important before they come to class. Most importantly, and this is a key feature, functionality feature that professors really tend to like, you can randomize the questions under test presentation. That's going to be at the very bottom of the screen. So if you want every assessment to be slightly different for each student, you would click on randomize question. And another thing that you can do, if for whatever reason you determine that the assessment is there, you want students to be able to work through the questions and see the answers, see the correct answer, but you don't want that assessment to factor in your overall grades. That's something that now Blackboard allows you to control. So for example, we have the self-assessment options. So I can determine to uncheck the default, which is to include this test in the Grade Center score calculations. And then you can hide the results for this test completely from the instructor and the Grade Center. So if you just don't want to see anything at all, you don't have that to be, if you don't want to be concerned with that assessment at all, you can uncheck both of those. If you do want that test to be in the Grade Center score calculations, you would check it. So how might you use this? Maybe as you're looking through all of the assessment that we've created in the course pack, you determine that there are several exercises that would be useful for students to work through, but you don't necessarily want that to factor in their overall grade. You can deploy those assessments, perhaps make them extra credit, and allow students to take them if they will, but they won't factor into your grade book. The results will not go into the grade book and be counted it won't be a factor into their overall scores. This is really useful for self-assessment. So once you've changed all the deployment settings, you're then going to select on Submit. And once you do that, the assessment that we've placed in the exams content area is now available. Notice that it's not showing up as available here because I set the deployment settings for a time that was in the past. That's definitely something you want to keep in mind as you're making the assessments deployable. If I wanted to fix that, I would click on the icon. I'm going to edit the test options, which is going to take me into that screen we were just looking at. And by scrolling down, I can fix the deployment. So now I'm going to set this to a time in the future, and I'll change display until also until a time in the future, and I'll hit submit. And once I do that, the item will be available on April 23rd, which is the time of this recording has not yet arrived. Now you may determine that you want to edit this quiz in some way. So this is the assessment that we created for you. It was automatically uploaded with all the other assessment when you installed the course pack. But if you want to edit the assessment in any way, you can do that. And you do it in the same way that you edit the test options, the deployment options. So I'm going to select on the little gray caret icon, and this time I'm going to select edit the test. When you edit the test, you're now at the level of the micro level of actually editing the questions within the assessments itself. And just scrolling down, we can see the entirety of the assessment. So we have 5 questions here. So maybe you feel this just isn't long enough and you want to add some additional questions. You can do that by simply clicking, determining where in this assortment of questions you want your question to appear, and then clicking here on the plus icon. That's how you add a question. And that can be any type of question that Blackboard supports. So true, false, multiple choice, matching, whatever is supportable in Blackboard, you can create right there between the 2 questions that we created. Now notice also that we have taken the time for every one of these questions to build in some feedback that's going to relate back to the student's a student's book. So again, thinking about how you might use the assessment in your classroom, you can assign assessment, for example, and make it deployable a couple of days before students come to class. It automatically turns off because you've controlled those settings, maybe 2 or 3 minutes before students filter into the class. You can make that assignment mandatory, so they have to, for example, they have to score 100 in order to get credit for it, but they can take it as many times as they like, and you'll take the highest grade. And you'll know that because of this feedback, students will have been receiving some guidance when they've scored or when they get the wrong answer on a question. So all of these pieces fit together ultimately to help you. And I'll say again and again, every one of your students is going to be able to access everything that we've already seen from the very first day of class if you take the time to install the course pack. And that's because there are no registration codes, there's no registration process, there's no purchase that students have to make. They just have access. All you have to do is install the course pack to make that happen, and then do what we're doing, which is just setting up the course to work the way that you want it to work. We really see ourselves as partners with you. So if I wanted to edit a question, not add a new question, but let's say you didn't like the way a particular question was framed, or the answer choices were framed, or perhaps you wanted to add some more guidance in the correct and incorrect feedback. The way that you would do that is simply find the question to which you want to make a change and select that gray icon. I'm now going to click Edit. And once I've done that, I can go in and I can make a change to the assessment. I can change the wording. I can change the answer. If I feel that answer 2 is actually correct, you have the power to do that. And then if I scroll down towards the bottom, you can see that I can actually change the feedback. So if you wanted to provide some of your own feedback to correspond to incorrect responses, you could do that. You could go beyond what we've done as publishers for you. Once you've made your changes, you're going to hit submit, and now the assessment is ready to go. One thing you need to keep in mind is that once you deploy an assessment and a student attempts the quiz, you can no longer make these sorts of edits. So be sure that you've made all of your edits before students have access to the assessment. So in summary, all of the assessment that's available to you when you install the course pack, it's waiting for you to use. You just have to determine where you want to place it. And once you've deployed an assessment, and we talked about that, you can then control how it's deployed to students. And you can also, even before you deploy it, you can go in at the micro level and change the questions themselves. The final thing that I'll say, if you want to see where all of the assessments reside, you can do so by looking to the left-hand navigation and scrolling down to test, surveys, and pools. I'm then going to select on test, and in that way you can take a look at all of the assessment that's available to you in the course pack. And as I hope you see, there is a lot of work that's been done here. So for the readings in Back to the Lake from Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, all the way through the rest of the chapter. If I want to see all of the questions at once, so there are 4 pages with 98 assessments all together, I simply click Show All, and that's going to show me all of the questions. So just keep in mind that everything is available to you from within test, surveys, and pools, and all of these assignments are waiting for you to deploy. As soon as you tell Blackboard where to deploy them, they will deploy, and they'll create a column in your gradebook that will be filled once each student has submitted their answers.